Great.
So welcome everybody who's been able to join us today, and a special thank you to Uthra and Hansika. Hansika has come all the way from Ahmedabad to be live at the gallery today. It's my pleasure to welcome you all, and I begin by saying that as the gallery, it's a very landmark year for the gallery. We are into our 25th year, and as a gallery that's focused on converging on artists who are at the threshold of their careers, it's nice to be able to open the year with an exhibition of Hansika's works. Uthra, thank you so much for hosting this talk. Uthra is a textile curator based in the UK with a specialist interest in textiles, fiber art, and she's recently won a prestigious award from the Art Fund to build up a collection of art by textile artists from South Asia. Hansika is an artist based in Ahmedabad, like I said, and her practice is deep and comes from a philosophy of self-reflection. She chooses the color indigo, she delves deep into the symbolic significance of indigo and uses the metaphor of thread and zari to talk about resilience and how it helped her deal with melancholy and how she managed to hold herself through the last turbulent years. At the end of the talk, you're welcome to ask questions, and I now request Uthra to take this forward.
Thanks so much, Trinity. Thank you very much for this lovely invitation to write about Hansika's fantastic work and to do this Insta live chat, and a warm welcome to everyone from around the world. I can see people from India and Pakistan and the UK have joined. So a warm welcome to you all, and thank you all for joining. So what we're going to do over the next 20 minutes or so is just have a chat about Hansika's work, and in particular the connections she's making to the dyes and stitch and thread, and to try and unpack some of the connections that she holds so closely to her heart, and why it is that she finds such a profound connection with this particular dye, indigo. So I'm just going to start by reading a little bit from the text that I had written about Hansika's work, and then we'll just launch into some questions. So for Hansika, indigo is more than just a colour. It has a deeply personal connection to the way she processes her life and emotions. Indigo speaks to her heart, to the layers of tragedy, the vastness of the whole cosmos, allowing her to transcend to a meditative zone and unlocking the potent magic of alchemy. So Hansika, perhaps we can start by unpacking that a little bit more, and perhaps you can tell us why it is that you are drawn in this very deeply emotional way to indigo.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much, Uthra, and thank you to keep it up for me to be here. It's really amazing. Yeah, so for the color indigo in itself is a very seductive kind of color. It has many, many layers of complexity if you actually dissect it. It comes from a green plant, becomes this very magical blue color. And the same dye has such a great wavelength. It can be very, deep, dark dye, as well as it can be a very pale blue. And both of them, if you look at them, one can be very depressive and the other can be very light and calm. So it just carries this weird kind of spectrum that has a lot of possibility. Second, in general, politically speaking, also this color has held a lot of history all around the world. It has sort of changed the world history. It has changed India's history. It was one of the first rebellion for freedom. So, when it comes to those things, I find a connect that this color is much more than just the color. It's
Right.
the plant, it's the freedom, and then it's all the emotions when you look at the color. So somehow I have, through my process of self-reflection, I just asked one day if my soul would be of a color, what color it would be. It was just like an art creative process that I was doing for myself. And immediately I was like, it will be indigo. It's like so deep, dark, beautiful color, yet it can be very depressive. It can have like multiple layers. You can keep
Yeah.
looking at it
Yeah.
in an
And
awe,
so,
and you
and
can actually repulse it.
yeah, and what I think the way you articulated the layers of the shades and how it transforms from this very humble plant, and then it goes into these magical shades of deep, deep, dark, inky blue, and then it can change again to all sorts of different shades of light blue and greenish blue. And I think that speaks to the emotions, but also you touched on the political significance of indigo. And as we heard, you actually have flown into Delhi from Ahmedabad, the home of Gandhi, and Gandhi's ashram is there. And obviously indigo has a deeply embedded political history in the independence movement of India. How much of that were you aware of growing up in Ahmedabad, and how much of that were you consciously tapping into when you were thinking about indigo?
So, I in general have always had this knack of reading history. Always loved it. What has happened before and what are the ripple effects that we are facing right now because of those things. And second of all, the whole Indigo Revolution, it actually happened in Champaran, which is present day Bihar.
Yeah.
And my family comes from there. So I sort of always have, I have heard about these stories of the famine that has happened because of the indigo plantation. So it was very much in my subconscious, which I think I sort of alchemized it and brought it to my consciousness. And again, when it comes to living in Ahmedabad, there is a huge history of textiles. Of course, there is a huge influence of Gandhi in a political way, but as well as that, there is a huge significance of textiles there, the ajrak fabric, which is completely dyed from the indigo. So I have had like a lot of exposure to it. So I have sort of like read a lot about it. So now I know the details and the struggles that, all these crafts have gone through to actually emerge. Ajrak is a geometrical thing, but it's sort of, we see like floral patterns happening it because Europeans wanted to buy it. So they had to manipulate their dye and they had to manipulate their design. So it's quite interesting. Yeah.
So it sounds like almost like the historical development and this magical plant has been very much part of your life history and life story, from the different places you've lived in India to the very place you're living in now. And it sounds like that fascination and that connection with indigo has kind of evolved organically for almost from the time you were born, it sounds like, because it's so much part of your life. Can you just explain a little bit about the color and how you connect the different shades of the colors within indigo to your emotional process in making the art?
Yeah. So I try, first of all, to be very organic with if I'm dyeing the pigment by myself or if I'm getting it woven, I do not form a structure. First of all, I let it be. And then there is a huge array of indigo that you can step into. So if I am feeling either extremely intense emotions that I am unable to even articulate at that time, it's just a feeling that is happening, then I always go to the deepest, darkest blue and a very rugged fabric. And similarly, if there is something that, there is a mind fog or there is a confusion, that I have always felt that those pigments then starts having, those scratches, and there will be lighter shade and the darker shade. That's how I sort of play with it. And I have never actually experimented with the lighter shade of indigo, because I think I have not reached maybe that stage of my own human evolution where I can say that I'm this calm person, or I'm feeling this serene. Till now I have not felt that way. Maybe in future I will. So that's how my work may evolve. But
Yeah.
for now, yeah.
Yeah, and so, and what is it, you've just spoken there a little bit about the processes that you go through and how it's very much coming from this emotional state, the way you're selecting the materials that you're working with. Could you just tell us a little bit more about why it is that you're fascinated with thread and stitch? You use a lot of cord, and there's zari as well in your work. What is it that textile, stitch and fibers, what is it that what is it about that material that gives a gravitas and an importance to your work? Why are you drawn to that?
Yeah. So when it comes to embroidery, and especially like intense embroidery, and embroidery is literally a philosophy in itself, I feel. You literally pick a needle, you put in a thread, it's such a patient job. And then you pierce a little bit micro level of the fabric, and then you keep on repeating those things. And then in between the thread, tears up. Then you again have to, patiently tie it. So the whole philosophy somehow is of resilience and endurance. It's just magical how just on a simple flat surface, you can keep on adding layers and layers and layers and make it intense and intense and intense, adding more emotions to it, adding more depth to it, adding more strength to it. A fabric becomes stronger when embroidery is added to it in general because of the thread strength.
And do you
So
start off, sorry, I was just going to ask Hansika, do you start off with sketches when you're making your artwork, or do you go straight to the canvas, straight to the cloth with needle and thread? How do you know what pattern you're going to create, or is it very spontaneous?
It's very spontaneous. I have never done like a sketch before making it. I sit with my emotions, I meditate on it, then I sort of in my head intuitively know that this is the size that I'm going to pick, this is the kind of fabric that I'm going to pick. That is why I always keep like a reservoir of fabrics with me. Like a very coarse jute will be there, a very beautiful silk is also there, a cotton fabric is also there, so I can just pick with what emotion I am feeling very intuitively. And then I just carry on. I can in my head sort of see, things happening on the fabric, and that's how I just keep on adding. It's very intuitive that way. It's and also, if while doing this process my emotion starts to, if I start to feel better, that's when I think the zaris start appearing, because they are just very beautiful, like nice and shiny things. Yeah.
We all love zari, being Indian. And can you tell me a little bit about the indigo dyeing process? So you said you have a reservoir of materials, different different textures of fabrics. Where are you sourcing these fabrics from? And are you involved in the indigo dyeing process at all?
Okay, so the fabrics, I usually work very closely with a weaver or a craftsman. I, beforehand give them that at least give me a fabric which has like a cotton and linen blend, all the possibilities that you can imagine. And I have a textile design background, so I sort of know that how I can manipulate the threads to make it look a certain way and give it a certain strength. So I work very, very closely with weavers in Ahmedabad. So they usually I get my yarns dyed earlier, and I'm involved in that process to see what kind of colors are emerging. So we generally dye a lot of threads, and then we choose either the blends or the similar kind of threads to go together to develop the fabrics. When it comes to painting on canvases with pigments, that's just a very organic process. I don't use like a brush, but it is paint and then I let it flow in the water. So it has, that uneven feeling. Then I keep on repeating this process till it attains its desired depth.
I was wondering if it was possible to have a closer look at one of your works, because Tunti and Hansika, you're both situated in the gallery, and that would be great. So Hansika, could you just talk us through this particular work that we're looking at?
Yeah, so this one is called The Web of Tragedy, and I think I made this in 2020 during the COVID time. And initially I hadn't thought of how it turned out, but I just started, if you can see those white marks, it's very coarse, normal cotton fabric. I started very simple stitch, but at that time, whatever was happening around the world and whatever was happening with my own personal life, it just felt like tragedy after tragedy, and I'm just stuck in a web. So
sorry, Hansika, can I just interrupt? So what we're seeing there is the background canvas of indigo. Then we've got some stitch work in white cotton thread. And is there some zari work in there as well?
Yeah. So the shiny parts that you can see, it's actually all zari. So it's a cotton linen fabric, indigo dyed fabric. Then there are cotton stitches. Then there are more cotton stitches in the same color, which I think it's not so clear in the camera, but you can see the depths. Then there is zari added over to it. Then again, I have stitched more, like a web kind of structure that you can see with another cotton fabric, cotton thread.
And how big is it? Because it's difficult to tell from the camera.
This is around 36 inch by 40 inch.
So it's quite a large piece. Immediately when I look at it from afar, it looks like this mapping process, and it almost looks like a mapping process of your emotional journey that you were going through at this time.
Yeah, but see, it's very interesting when you work with embroideries. It's a language which is unknown, and I can create my own words with it. So if that's my language and that's my way of depicting my things, but if you see it in a certain way, you are building your own perception and interpretation of that, language of the threads. So it's quite interesting for me also to, when you're saying that it looks like it's been mapped, but for me it looks like more like a web.
Yes, I mean, I'm just seeing Greater Manchester, I'll be honest, Hansika. It looks like a map of dense inner city populations, but fascinating. I mean, the issue that I have, and for others who can't access the gallery in Delhi, is that we have to rely on the website and the fantastic pictures that the team have been taking. And if anybody wants to have a closer look at your work, then I would encourage everyone to go to Gallery Threshold's website, and you can have a look at all the individual pieces that are currently on display. But obviously, if you can go into the gallery, that's so much better as well. So thank you, Tunti, for just showing us the details of that. And I'm sure in different lights, the zari work would really capture the sort of the twinkling and glistening quality. Is there anything you want to say, Hansika, about some of the areas that are really densely worked, and some of the areas that are more sparsely worked with stitch?
Yeah, so I have kept some areas which is extremely, like, it's extreme stitches one on the other. It's because, when you're going through something, sometimes all the emotions come in. Since it's a process of self-reflection, then I feel like at one point, for few days, you just feel all the emotions, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, all happening at once. And all of them then slowly goes away. And then you have, less of them. So that's why there is like a dense area, and then there is little bit of threads happening on the other side. It was actually at that time where I started to find my calm in that situation.
That's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to seeing them in real life when I come over to India
Yeah.
in hopefully in the next couple of months. So Hansika, I just wanted to ask you about where you see your practice going, because you're at the very start of your career. You're an emerging artist, and so how do you see and anticipate, and what is it that you'd like to perhaps work more on, and what you'd like to experiment with next?
As of now, I definitely see, a lot of things happening within the same color, because I feel since it's a process of evolution for me and reflection for me, it's going to go for a very long time. And there is a certain emotional baggage that I need to clear. And I think this is one of the coping mechanisms for me. So there are many, pages in the journal to be filled. So there are many canvases or more fabrics for me to be stitched like that. But specifically, I'm very fascinated with the whole human psyche and how it is playing out in our world and even in my personal life, like my interaction with other people, few very close to me. And it's getting very complex as I'm growing up. When I was just in my early 20s, things were really happy and chirpy. But now I understand the complexity of human emotions and the whole idea of unlearning things and relearning them, evolving yourself. And yeah, so I don't know, every day is a self-reflection process. So I am very interested now to know, where does this resilience actually comes from? There is a strength in the spine. It carries all the information in your body, like neurons does all those things, your nervous system does that. And the similar kind of web you can find in trees also. So I don't know where we are finding this resilience to keep on going and becoming better and doing our best job in human revolution for our personal selves. And yeah, so first, basically, I want to know myself better than I know anyone else by the end of the day. So that's the process where I see right now it's going.
Yeah, and particularly at this very intense political time of turmoil that we're experiencing and seeing in different
Yeah.
parts of the world. And so finally, before we open up to questions, and Tunti, perhaps I could bring you in on this as well. It's about there are a lot of young artists who are out there, emerging artists who will be listening to this and who will go back and listen to this online. What advice would you give to artists in your position who would love to be shown with a gallery, who would love to have that opportunity? What advice would you give? And Tunti, feel free to contribute to this conversation here, because it's thanks to you and your eye and your dedication and commitment to emerging artists to give people like Hansika such a fantastic and much needed opportunity. So perhaps both of you could perhaps offer some advice to people who've tuned in, who'd love to know more.
Well, patience is the first thing I think this generation needs to learn. And Hansika's work has actually been evolving over the last 2 years. The show got postponed, and I think that during that period of time, she's done some fantastic work. So from what she originally planned to show to what has actually now been sifted and put out is a much more chiseled body of work. So I think time and patience is what the younger generation of artists need to learn. There's a lot of exposure. There's a lot of, lot of stuff that's coming in through the internet. But I think this whole philosophy of self-reflection and developing your own identity and vocabulary is what they need to develop on.
And Tunti, what was it about Hansika's work that really caught your eye and caught your attention? What was it about her work as opposed to thousands of other young emerging artists out there that you felt that, yes, this is something that the gallery can get behind?
I spotted her work at the Lal Bhai Museum when they had their inaugural show a couple of years ago. And we had put in some works of Priya Ravish Mehra into that collection. And it's from my interaction with Priya and subsequently when, I was still working on the concept of Bakia and bind and bound. Those ideas were already churning in my head. So I think instinctively I got drawn to thread and indigo and zari and embroidery, and it's more about holding together. There was a depth to her practice. She comes as a trained textile designer, and she studied design and worked in that field. But there was something deeper about her work that stood out even in that very, very, very sophisticated chiseled collection.
Yeah. And it must be fantastic, Hansika, for you to have that endorsement from Tunti Gallery Threshold, one of the most revered, most well-established contemporary art galleries in Delhi. So it would be great to hear from you as well, what advice you would give to people in your situation who want to be seen and want to have their work shown in contemporary art spaces.
Yeah, to be honest, the kind of exposure and the way this whole exhibition worked out, I am really like in a happy way overwhelmed by it also. So it just is a good, confidence boost that I can keep on practicing more. So coming to the point of any advice, I'm not sure. I just have one advice which I feel like is a very important thing. Self-awareness. I mean, and I feel like no artist can stand if they are not self-aware. And if they are self-aware, their individuality is going to stand no matter what. Because we all are different. Our ways of projection is definitely going to be different. So rather than, falling in that loop of trends and, instant gratification that happens nowadays, even with my generation, I keep seeing these things, similar things on and on and on from different people. So maybe, self-awareness and individuality is a very big factor. And I don't know, patience. Patience is something, I'm a very old soul in that way. I can sit all day and have all the patience, and I feel like it really works. Patience with your practice also works.
Yeah.
It's not about, getting like quick results out of it.
Yeah. And I think for me, when we started talking and the invitation to connect with your work and to write about your work, the thing that struck me about your work was this deeply meditative process that you go through. And certainly when in our conversations that we had before we set up this live Insta chat, I also felt that there's something that is the quality of an old soul in a young person. There's something deeply cathartic, I feel, the process of working in this way with stitch and thread and the dyes and choosing the cloth. So delighted that you've both been able to share those insights. And so perhaps if anybody online who has joined us would like to ask a question, please feel free to type it or to say it in some way. I'm afraid I'm not sure how you would say it unless you join the actual video. But if anyone has any questions, please feel free to add or to ask. I know there's lots of love being sent out to you, Hansika and Tunti. That people are saying that they've already got your work. They have 3 pieces of your work, I saw one person say. So lots of lovely comments. Hello, Rahana. Hi, lovely to see you. A lot of friends and artists from all over the world have joined, so it's lovely. Tunti, is there something you'd like to add?
Well, we have Bose listening in, and I'd like to say that, he's really, really extended himself in the Kochi Biennale by giving the students a separate platform and emerging artists that platform as well.
Yeah, that's great. And it's what's really encouraging is, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I think Hansika's frozen a little bit. What's really great is that despite the pandemic, we still, and Gallery Threshold and galleries out there are still able to put on great shows and to get the work out there to be seen to a really wide international public audience. And I think having seen and worked with art galleries out there, the appetite and the way in which things are happen so quickly digitally, and everything gets online so quickly, is fantastic. So it's a real point, I think, for other galleries to note, because that's the way people can see and enjoy art all over the world. Oh, is she back? Yeah, I don't know. Sarah, have we got any questions? I can't see any questions. There's lots of lovely compliments about your work, Hansika, all saying it's brilliant, love it.
Thank you so much.
Are there any final words you'd both like to say? Because I don't think we've got any questions coming through.
Yeah. I'd just like to thank Hansika for being patient. And, you know, she's very open to being nudged in the right direction. So, you know, a lot of times there's a lot of communication that goes on between a curator and the artist. And I find that she's very, very receptive. She's not rigid. She just opens herself to ideas. And you can see the way the work is displayed, that it's not just one thing that she's doing. You know, there are these very personal works which are almost like pages from a diary. And the work at the back, Web of Tragedy, you know, this whole repetitive act of embroidery, of the needle piercing the cloth, is so similar to what we go through as life experiences, and what doesn't break us actually makes us.
Yeah, we have a question, but I can only see a little bit of it because it keeps flipping up on my Insta live. But it's about artists who've inspired you. Are there any particular artists who have inspired you or made a great change in your outlook as an artist?
To be honest, if we would call craftsmen an artist, that will be one thing, because I have actually closely worked with artisans, and I've seen how craftsmen work. They are very resilient people. They just keep on doing what they are doing, and you know, no matter what their life is going through, they just, if a potter is making a pot, then that person is so much intrigued in just making that pot all their life, no matter what is happening, and getting best at it. So that's, I'm not sure if I can, there's a whole controversy if I can call a craftsman an artist or not. So a lot of inspiration does come from there, which has directly inspired me to persevere this kind of work. And I really like Agnes Martin's work, how simple it is and how precise it is. And at the contrary, I like Tracy Emin's work as well, that how bold she is, how vulnerable she is with her work. Like, she opens herself out there. So it's just like the contradiction of these two artists that I am very fascinated with. You can be everything that you want.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting to hear this mixture of traditional crafts people, watching them, just learning from the way their hands move, if you like, that process. And then Agnes Martin and Tracy Emin, two great female artists at, you know, completely opposite ends of the spectrum. So really, I can immediately see how those things connect. So we had another question about how do you start? What's the first thing you start with?
So the first thing that I start with is what I am personally dealing with my life at that point. To be honest, I have found myself to be in a situation where, you know, to be happy and to be okay, I have to work 10x than normal people. I have a tendency to fall out very quickly. So I have to do a lot of, work that way. And so I have lots of inspiration that way. I need to journal those things out. So the starting point is always in a day or in a week or in a month. If I am going through certain things or something sometime in the past has happened and it's just in my head so persistently that it's nudging me each and every day and I need to get it out of my body, that's the first starting point. And then I start writing it on a canvas directly, like I just earlier mentioned, taking a relevant piece of fabric and stitching it in that way.
That's fantastic, because it almost gives you, when you're in that process of sitting quietly with thread, with the canvas, there's I think from what I've heard you talk about, Hansika, it's almost like you go into this zone. It's this other world that you go into, and from that comes the creative impulse. So I find that really, really captivating, actually, and I'm slightly envious, I must say, that you're able to do that. So we had another question about, I think it was along the lines of trusting your emotions. Somebody said, being a young artist, how do we trust the emotion, or do we look for a concept first, or what advice would you give to go about this? Because emotions are always fluctuating as well. Yeah, I think that was the question. I'm sorry, it keeps flipping up the screen, and I didn't have an opportunity to write it down. But Rahana's just put in here, your process and mine is a bit similar, smiley face. So that's great. Hansika.
So I think your instinct and gut never lies. That's what my belief is. It never lies. So that's the point where you give into it. And I don't think so emotions fluctuate. We keep on jumping to emotions from one to the other to, not deal with this, not deal with that. That's why we keep on fluctuating. But we actually even sit with it. If you are having an emotional concept, if you just sit with it and let it pass through you, let it flow through you, that's a good space to start, actually. That's a good space to feel confident, and that's a very good space to feel good about that particular body of work that you're going to draw from that. So it's not about fluctuations, it's about finding that pin, which is the actual pin of trigger or whatever.
It's so interesting, because it sounds like that whatever emotion you're going through, whether it's a positive one or a negative one, it has this great power to produce this burst of creativity in you. And maybe it's important and helps us process this whole spectrum of emotions. Oh, we've just got another. Please tell us how to deal with creative block. How do you come out of it quickly? Well, I think that comes to all of us. I can tell you that I've stared at a blank screen for many long hours thinking, what on earth am I supposed to do today? So yes, please tell us whatever you experienced a creative block and how do you come out of it?
I actually, touch wood, do not experience that much of a creative block, because I keep in my schedule time to just look at the window. I will go to my studio at days, and for straight 4 or 5 hours, I'll just look outside the window, look at all the people doing funny things, doing weird things. I'll keep doing that. So it's not like every single day I am working. Practice is just one thing that I'll do little bit to keep something going on. But most of the days then will go sitting idle. And that's what I think works really well.
Yeah. That's very disciplined. So I hope that's helped. Helped the person who has asked that question. So I'm conscious of the time. It's 1:10 in the UK, and I think we were going to speak for about half an hour. So unless anyone has any burning questions, I guess we'll wrap up our conversation now and just extend a huge Thank you to everyone who's joined online from all over the world. A warm thank you to Hansika for sharing such a personal and fascinating insight into your work, and of course to Tunti for her generosity and setting this up and being brave. This is Tunti's first Insta live chat, but I can tell you, Tunti, you've acted like a pro. Water off a duck's back.
I'd like to thank Saurav and Mohit also for all the back office support. Thank you so much, Uthra.
Great. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you, you too.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Good night. And Uthra, have a good day.
Thanks so much, Hansika. Thanks, Tunti. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.